Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of CS Cyber. I'm Sean.
And I'm Chad.
And there's a lot in the news right now. And let's start out with another breach of a water plant, unfortunately.
Arkansas City.
Yeah, it's not that big. The attack is significant, but the city itself is only about 11,000 people.
And it's in Kansas.
It is in Kansas. Apparently, the water plant went into manual operation, which I can explain a little bit about what that means.
What does it actually mean?
So what that means is they basically disconnected the control system network, and then they have to operate all of the valves and everything manually. It means that they have to physically go visit the wells that are pulling the water out, wherever the source of water is in Arkansas City. I don't know if they use groundwater or what, but water towers have to be visited in person to check levels. So it's an extremely manual operation.
In those situations, do they revert back to kind of pen and paper? I mean, it's a manpower thing, right? So they're traveling around to these locations and they're recording. Whatever.
Yes, the amount of EPA regulations that go into what you have to document, not only when you go into manual operation, but when any significant event happens in a water plant, it's a lot. We were involved in an incident in our area that involved a water plant, and I bet you it was a stack that high after a few months of just the manual documentation that they had to do. It was enormous.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a lot. I mean, to keep track of, and what do you do with it? So
water and wastewater is a very heavily regulated industry, as is most critical infrastructure, right? I mean, power is the same way. The problem with water and wastewater is we just need some cybersecurity standards in there, and we can't get them. So that's a whole other show.
Yeah, and that infrastructure is old. I mean, it's really old, right? So getting the funds to get that up to date is needed.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I definitely understand that there's some challenges to keeping that infrastructure updated, but we can't just stop and go, well, it's too hard, so we're not going to do it, right? I mean, this is water. This is water and wastewater, especially the water piece. We need water to live.
Yeah.
All right.
Moving on.
Yep, let's move on. So 3 months after the Cleveland attack, Cleveland says we're still not done.
They're still investigating it.
Yeah. This is just a really good example of what happens when the news stops reporting on something. People just think it got resolved.
Yeah. And we were kind of talking about that, right? I mean, sprinkle in a free credit monitoring for a year and it just kind of fizzles out in the news and goes away.
Yeah, we've definitely entered a cycle of these events for sure. But in this particular case, like you said, the city says, hey, we're not done investigating. Quite frankly, not that unusual, especially if some of these, especially Cleveland and especially Columbus, the more significant they are, obviously, the longer it takes. Now, possibly the good news, if there was any little silver lining of this, I would say that this might be an indication that maybe Cleveland had some good logs to look at, and it's taken a while to go through it. So
yeah, and it also looks like they had some sort of security in place, right? Taxation, utilities, water was not impacted, so
right. Agreed.
They didn't really call out what parts of their infrastructure was, but
right.
Yeah. So,
but I think that's also an example of, at least from what I recall, polar opposite from Cleveland and Columbus on how they responded. So
yeah. Well, what about Columbus? Do you have anything there?
I haven't heard anything new out of Columbus, honestly. I think that ever since Director Orth went and testified in front of City Council, there hasn't been a lot after that. So I don't know what the status is of the city. I don't know if they said they had 23% of the city to restore yet. I don't know. We'll have to keep looking. I haven't seen anything in the news lately.
Cool. All right. Mac OS Sequoia. You're a Mac user.
I am. And I don't jump on these. Mainly our internal security staff here at Secure Cyber has definitely trained us to do not do these when they come out right away. In general, what we're seeing is about a 3 to 4 week delay for security tools to come up to speed. So I think it's a great exercise to go through to just make sure that people know that when this stuff first comes out, especially a new Mac update, to definitely delay that installation.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that they called out like specific vendors. I mean, CrowdStrike was in here.
Sentinel One. Yeah, you'll see a lot of EDRs in there. Yeah, a lot of antivirus, and I think it's because there's like a Mac development channel where developers of software and things like that get early access so that they could start retooling. I think they don't make the updates available for to these in the developer channel long enough. So I think you get a shorter runway when they're ready to go, and I think that just then they have to rush for the next 3 to 4 weeks in order to get ESET, Sentinel One, CrowdStrike, and all these other. I think it takes them that long to retool and get up to speed.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So just don't rush to this stuff. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services announced the breach of over 3 million health plan beneficiaries and personal health information.
And these numbers just keep getting huge.
Yeah, this one was interesting. I looked at this one. So this was actually through the Wisconsin Physician Service, which is like a third-party like processing, whatever. But this was from the MoveIt vulnerability. So what was interesting about this story was they were actually breached before they patched and then didn't realize it for like a year later.
That happened with Exchange. When we had that big vulnerability with on-prem Exchange, that same thing happened where a patch was issued, but there was a lot of concern about if you were breached before the patch got installed, then essentially you were trapping them in there, right? I mean, just for visualization purposes. Interesting.
Yeah. So that affected 3 million. They're offering free credit monitoring.
Oh, thank goodness. Because
you may get a letter here shortly. So,
well, let's talk about the credit monitoring real quick. That is something. Let me just draw an analogy for you.
Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday, and it was
okay. Here's what when they say we're providing free credit monitoring to you. This is what happens. Let's pretend you're at a bank. And you're making a withdrawal or a deposit, but you're at the teller, right? And the bell goes off, and there's a robber inside the bank. Okay? Yeah, and so that's bad, right? Yeah. But he's not bothering you. He's got his money, and he's headed out the door. And as he's leaving the door, there's a security guard standing on the outside of the building, right? And the bad guy just runs past this guy, runs past the security guard. And the security guard looks over and goes, hey, somebody just robbed the bank.
Yeah.
But the robber just gets away, right?
Yeah.
That's credit monitoring. It's going to tell you after it happened.
Right. And what that means to me is I'm going to get an email that says, hey, something bad happened. Just wanted to let you know. And I'm going to be like, thanks a lot.
Yeah, just FYI, your personal data has been compromised, but we wanted to let you know.
Right. So that's going to trigger like a whole chain of events that's going to require so much time on my part, you know? So
I don't know if it's just a situation where the world is just numb now. So we know that the normal event is free credit monitoring, new credit card. I mean, all the fraud detection stuff. Like, is that just the normal thing that happens and we just move on?
It seems to be.
I think it is.
So
right.
All right. So MoneyGram, they confirmed a cyber attack. That actually took down operations. They couldn't send or receive MoneyGrams. Just thought it was interesting that it literally shut down their entire payment processing ability. So
is this like a Venmo?
I thought MoneyGram was like the stations, like maybe you could do it at Kroger or isn't it kind of like Western Union?
You know what, man? I don't know. Is this like a wire money type thing? It might be.
Yeah, I think it's more like that. So.
All right. I'm just not a fan of any of these things. I've never had to use anything like this. I've never had to wire anybody money. That just seems sketch, but I guess that happens. But I'm also not a fan of these Venmo and all that other crap.
Oh, I'm a big fan of Venmo. It's really easy. Zelle. Zelle's no good.
I don't know.
I had a bad experience
Why not?
with Zelle. It transfers it like right out of your checking account. So.
That seems bad.
Yeah, it was bad. So.
Well, what does the other one do? What does Venmo do?
It's off your credit card. I think it offers like more protection.
Oh, because there's a path in between you and the bank account or something.
Yeah.
Oh, so. All right. I don't know. I don't use any of that junk.
Oh, I heard today CrowdStrike was on Capitol Hill defending I mean, they're sorry. They didn't.
I know they're sorry, all right.
Right. So
they sent a senior vice president. They didn't even send their CEO.
That was a strategic play. That's not going to be their last time there, I'm sure.
I hope not. The biggest thing that came out of this, aside from the apology again, is Microsoft going, maybe people don't need direct kernel access. Yeah. I wonder what that's going to do to the EDR industry.
Well, that's why, CrowdStrike was there defending, the kernel access and why it was needed, right? So,
but they don't get to make that decision.
They don't, but I think, to their point, I think Microsoft has publicly put that out there so that people could develop for that. So,
right. I don't know. I just read where Microsoft is like, look, we're going to have to change the way partners and vendors get access to kernel. And I don't know what that means. It was real cryptic.
Yeah. But I also heard that Delta, they're going to need like $550 million.
Oh my gosh.
So that was...
wow.
That's a big number. I guess it was for all the flight cancellations, all the manpower to get it restored. Like it was...
Oh, I bet.
It's a big number.
Yeah. They took down the entire planet.
Yeah, it was a global outage. That's how it's being reported. So
there were only 2 airlines flying, Alaska and Southwest,
and they're on Windows 95, so probably. They're all good.
Or NT.
Yeah,
that was funny. All right, well, the CrowdStrike thing will just continue to live on, right? It'll always be there. What else we got?
Just a couple other things. So WSUS end of life, you reported on that. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think we've all used that at some point. They indicated that they're not doing any more platform updates and they're not taking feature requests. So if I read between the lines, it said that it'll still work. Like you're still going to get content updates from it, but I think they're shooting the flare saying we're probably going to kill this.
This is going to be a slow death.
Yeah, I think so. Because they can't really just take it out from underneath you.
I see that a lot in smaller shops that are still using that. So
I don't know, man. I used it. I tried to use it, and it just, we were both in IT for a long time, and it just, I always fought it. Like I could never really get it to do what it needed to do. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so we got one more Dell.
Yeah.
Touched on Dell in the weekly cyber update twice in 1 week. I must have missed the first one.
Yeah. So the first one was Atlassian. So that was compromised. That was already a vulnerability. And I think this is that the bigger they are, the harder they fall story. I continue to say those words when we hear like Toyota and a lot of these companies are in multiples. Like they're on their 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th breach. And I just think it's too big to get a hold of. Like after you get to a certain point. Now this is bad, right? Because Dell also sells cybersecurity equipment.
Right. Was this internal employees? Was this internal?
Yes, it was employees, and it said employees and partners. Correct.
But they also had one that was a customer-facing one, right?
Yes, I think that was the Atlassian one.
Okay.
So the thing that's not good about this 10,000 employee one is that they got employee IDs. They also got some internal IDs. So when you start getting like very specific internal type data, they could really start using this in a nefarious manner to either do physical, breaches where they're, pretending to be employees and make IDs that look accurate and stuff. So
you can really target the individual.
Yeah, I just think as these breaches get more specific outside of the PII realm, right, outside of Social Security numbers, date of birth, and stuff like that, I think hackers are putting these pictures together. And I think they can do deeper damage.
Well, thank God I have free credit monitoring.
Yeah, I'm really glad you have that.
So that's all we got.
Yeah, irony. Dell was at Falcon, which CrowdStrike just had. They have like a yearly conference. Dell was named the channel partner of the year from CrowdStrike. Like they sell the most CrowdStrike, but they've been in breach twice. I don't know. Get your act together, Dell.
Oh, the irony.
You're Dell. All right, that's all we have for today. So thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoy this banter back and forth. And until next time.
See you next time.